Okay, let's talk about remote ID briefly. You first encounter remote ID when you get to subpart D of the part 14 or 14 CFR 107. And you can see it right down here. Let me get my pen out here. It says here at the very bottom, no remote pilot command may operate a small unmanned aircraft in sustained flight over open air assemblies unless the operation meets the requirements of either 89.110 or 89.115. So um, we have to go to that regulation. Just a point before this. So we're talking about Category 1 operations. This is the flight over regulation that applies to fairly small aircraft, obviously less than 0.55 pounds on takeoff, including everything else on the aircraft. Doesn't contain any exposed rotating parts that may lacerate skins. So the pilot in command is the one who makes the determination that it's Category 1 operation, as long as it fulfills all these things. Now, if you say it's Category 1 and then you somehow hits a person and causes them to go to the hospital or makes them be, knocks them unconscious, then you were wrong. It's not a Category 1 drone, and you're the one has just performed a reckless operation. And yeah, so you want to be very careful in just jumping to that conclusion. But remember, it's got to be less than 0.55 pounds. Does not contain exposed rotating parts, and the topic of today is RID, or remote identification. It must comply with that. So let's look at that. Go to 89.110 first. 89.110 says this: operation with standard remote identification, and it says all aircraft must have that. And then lists all the from takeoff to shutdown. Got to have it on. Broadcasting elements. We don't need to go to 89.305. You can do that on your own, but basically that tells law enforcement, well, pretty much everybody, where you are, not only where the drone is, because if it's flying in restricted airspace, they need to be able to find you, right? So it also tells everybody where you are in your control station. It tells you how fast the drone's going, how high it's going, location, timestamp, identification, all those things. You check that out for yourself, but it's not on the exam. Those elements are not on the exam. Just the fact that it does do this continually. And this is the point that's on the test though. If it stops working, you must, or no longer starting to transmit those things, you need to land as soon as practicable. Practicable is a key word here. Okay, so this is called a standard remote identification module. Just a little bit of background here. It's after 2023, I believe it was. Doesn't matter, but it's stipulated now that all manufacturers of drones must include that as part of the aircraft. So it's on your aircraft if you bought a fairly new drone, and it's supposed to sort of automatically work. Why does the FAA care about that? Because there's always going to be people that do naughty things and fly where they shouldn't fly and do all those things. And they just said, if we're going to integrate unmanned aircraft into the air traffic control, the national airspace system, we need to we need to find these people and tell them, don't do that anymore. There has to be some way to enforce these rules, so we have to find out who they are and what they're doing, and the FAA is very kind about it. They give us instruction to help us out for a few times, but if we keep on doing the naughty things, then they start fining us and taking our certificate away from it and all those things. So anyway, that's the behind the scene thing for why do we have remote ID. There's a lot of hype on the internet. It's, oh, this ruins the sport. It's no longer any fun. They all know where we are. And that's the big deal. Just don't do naughty things. Follow the rules. They're written there for a purpose. It's not just arbitrary. They don't want us to bump into manned aircraft, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So anyway, additional things you need to just recall about this is that it needs to be list that serial number on on your registration, and that works out well. It's not a big deal. Let's see what else. Can't disable it. Yeah, here it is. Here I was looking for that. Certificate of aircraft registration must have the serial number of the RAD, which the manufacturer provides in that case. Okay, but how about other situations? 89115 addresses the fact that you might have a very old drone or an older drone, or you might have made your own drone. I just bought a bunch of parts. They're easily to find. Find the parts, put one together, make your own drone. Fine. You still need to have a remote ID. It's called a remote identification broadcast module. That's something you Velcro it to the side or strap it to the side of your drone. It does the same thing. It produces all this signal, goes out there, and tells people where the drone is and how high it is, and also tells law enforcement essentially where to find you. You're over there in the bushes flying your drone over the place where you should not be. Well, law enforcement can find you and say, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" Or even if you're just harassing people, and it may, FAA does not care about privacy issues, but if you're violating someone's privacy, they'll find you. Anyway, uh, so um, same. The 89.320 is just the what are all the different elements. There's a bunch of elements, but you don't really need to know that. Just that basically it's telling you where the drone is and where you are. Certificate of aircraft registration, same stipulation. You got to put, except the fact that since it's not part of the drone, the manufacturer doesn't give that. The manufacturer of the module that you buy, let's see, I've got one here, don't I? Yeah, here's one right here. Where's the camera? That's a identification mod. It's just one particular identification mod. It's got some Velcro on the back. You just stick it to the drone. But anyway, it comes with its own registration number, it's a unique one. Then you need to attach that to the drone registration. Takeoff to shutdown, same stuff. Pre-flight, prior to takeoff, person with the controls must ensure the remote ID broadcast is functioning. So it has a little light on, a little green light says it's working. If you lose, same old thing. If you lose, if it stops working, you got to land as soon as practicable. Okay, continue. B, that same 89, 115 says operations at an FAA recognized identification area, you may fly without remote identification. So that's really the only opportunity you may have to be able to fly without remote ID. So we have all of our aircraft have remote ID because they're all modern aircraft. But if you didn't have remote ID or you made your own aircraft and doesn't have the module, you could fly in our right out here by the football field, right? So they're all over the country. You can find these little areas that somebody has made the application for a FRIA, F-R-I-A is what they're abbreviated as. You're allowed to fly there. However, the important part is you must, in those situations, you must always be able to see the unmanned aircraft at all times through the operation. Again, we know that's the regulation now that you must see it at all times. However, if you had a internal remote ID, you could apply for a waiver to fly beyond line of sight. However, if you have a remote ID module, and this is the question you'll have on the exam, if you have a module in or out of FRIA, doesn't matter, but you must be able to see the unmanned aircraft at all times. You can't get an exemption in that case. So anyway, that's just a brief thing about remote ID, a little editorializing, sorry, but I mean, it's not a big deal. If we want to make money making drones, we have to get access to the National Airspace System, so this is a good thing, not a bad thing. Yeah, the fact that bad guys can find your drone by getting a little app on your phone where they can find out the remote ID signal, where you are and all that. What's a big deal? It's not that big a deal. Most of us don't fly, and most bad guys really don't know how to do it anyway. So, all right, I probably said too much. All right, that's it.